Greetings to all in love and light of the one infinite creator. My name is Jonathan Tong, and I'm facilitator for the Seattle Law of One study group. We can be found on the list of study groups on the L&L research page shown on your screen. We do also have a Facebook page, and we do meet twice a week on Zoom. Tuesdays from 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific time, and Saturdays from 8 to 10 a.m. Pacific time. You don't have to live in Seattle or anywhere near Seattle to join our Facebook group or our Zoom sessions. Anyone who's interested and available is welcome to join. Just contact us at seattlelawofone@gmail.com to get on our weekly mailing list. We send out weekly updates to let you know what we're doing that week, as well as the Zoom links. We do also have a YouTube channel where we have recordings of our podcast series, as well as previous Q&As with Jim McCarty, Austin Bridges, Gary Bean, and Trisha Bean from the L&L Research Channeling team. Otherwise, again, just contact us at seattlelawofone@gmail.com to get on our mailing list if you would like to join any of these Q&As. Otherwise, today we are once again delighted and overjoyed to be having some time with our friend Jim McCarty to talk about the Law of One and how to live it in our daily lives. How are you doing today, Jim?
Doing really well. It's been a great day.
Nice.
We actually got some unpredicted rain today.
Nice.
It came from the north, and supposedly we're going to get some freezing temperatures soon. So my flower gardens are probably going to see the end of their tenure on the planet.
A lot of leaves changing color, falling?
Oh yeah,
already?
lots of colors. Yeah, it's very colorful fall.
Just kind of getting started on it in Seattle, or at least in my little part of Seattle, looking out the window. It's a beautiful change of seasons for sure. Hey, you did mention before we started recording that, as you have noted on your Camelot journal more than a couple of times, you're in the process of recording portions of Living the Law of One 102. Care to give our viewers an update on what you're doing and what that's about?
Well, first of all, we changed our recording studio from the basement to what used to be Carla's closet in her office upstairs, because there was rain about a month ago that my sump pumps are still responding to. So it was all noisy down there. So I had to change it around. It's really nice and cozy up there too. I think it's a better place to do it. So with that said, 102 and 103 were books that I've written from Carla's outlines that she made back when she was working on Living Law of One 101, The Choice. So fortunately, I was able to find those outlines and write both books. And the audiobook that I'm making now is the outer work. And as I mentioned to you earlier, Carla was able to write only one chapter there. That was the first chapter. And it's beautifully written, even though we are assuming it may not have been her final edit. It was still so well done. She had some things to share in there that were beautiful and mind-blowing.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yes.
So Living the Law of One 101 was the choice, and Living the Law 102 is the outer work?
Yes. And 103 is the inner work.
Nice. Yeah, so looking forward to that. Any updates on where the book publication editing process is at?
No, I don't know when that will be out. I believe it will be sometime this fall, because it's going hand in hand somehow in a way I don't understand, because I'm not technically wise in these things, but Austin's working on the book and the audio chapters that I can record simultaneously. So there's 4 chapters along with the preface and the prologue that are ready to be recorded, and I assume that they'll be ready for a paperback as soon as the rest are done too.
Looking forward to the recordings. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for letting us know. I do see a few questions in the chat window, so I did want to remind folks who are on the Zoom call right now, if you have a question that you would like to ask Jim, please go ahead, type it, put it in the chat window, and we will go in the order of questions that are there. in doing the questions. Otherwise, I did actually have a question that was sent in a couple weeks ago from a group member who was not able to join us. This is a question about the beginning of the raw contact, and it is specifically about a specific question from session 1. So if you don't mind, I'm going to put this on the screen so that we can see it. This was the 7th question in session 1, and the questioner, or the person asking this question, basically wants to know, do you remember what the question was? Because it says the question was lost because the questioner was sitting too far from the recording device at that time. Sorry, I am trying to get myself queued in. Sorry. Okay. The response was, Ra did say, consider, if you will, that the universe is infinite. This has yet to be proven or disproven, but we can assure you that there is no end to yourselves, your understanding, what you would call your journey of seeking, or your perceptions of the creation. That which is infinite cannot be many, for manyness is a finite concept. To have infinity, you must identify or define that infinity as unity. Otherwise, the term does not have any referent or meaning. In an infinite creator, there is only unity. You have seen simple examples of unity. You have seen the prism, which shows all colors stemming from the sunlight. This is a simplistic example of unity. In truth, there is no right or wrong. There is no polarity, for all will be, as you would say, reconciled at some point in your dance through the mind-body-spirit complex, which you amuse yourself by distorting in various ways at this time. This distortion is not in any case necessary. It is chosen by each of you as an alternative to understanding the complete unity of thought, which binds all things. You are not speaking of similar or somewhat like entities or things. You are everything, every being, every emotion, every event, every situation. You are unity. You are infinity. You are light, love, light, love, light, light, love. You are. This is the law of one. The person asking the question, and I think I know the answer to this question already, wants to know, do you remember what the question was, to which this was the response, Jim?
No, I wasn't there.
That would be a no.
The raw contact was not planned, and I was out shopping for groceries, and it was Don and Carla and another fellow who had been a member of our Sunday night meditation group, who was learning how to channel. And instead of the regular Hatan or Latwii coming through, Ra came through. And this question has to have been asked by Don, but I don't know what the question was. And I don't know why it didn't record, because his other questions recorded. And down here in 1.9, that background noise, that was me coming in the door of the living room with my arms full of groceries, because I was out shopping. And so I just kind of tiptoed down the hall into the kitchen and put the groceries away and waited for the session to end. And Don was really excited after the session. He came back and he said, "This is what we've been waiting for 19 years. Could you transcribe this now?" And I said, "Now?" He said, "Yes, please." And he never got excited about anything I'd ever seen him before. Carla called him her melancholy man. He was not melancholy when the raw contact started.
That's fascinating. Yes, I remember you mentioning that before. May I ask your take on the first sentence in the 3rd paragraph where Ra says, in truth, there is no right or wrong? I know that can be confusing, perhaps, for a number of folks in 3rd density. What's your take on that? What do you think Ra means when they say, in truth, there is no right or wrong? And how do we apply that to our 3rd density existence?
Basically, the one great original thought of love, the creator, wants to know more about itself, so it created the creation out of itself. And the way that we can see that in our daily lives is that whatever we do is a part of a way to help the creator know itself, to help us know ourselves, and to help us know the creator. So the right or wrong is only a part of what we see in the third density. Actually, if you looked at negative polarity entities, they could be what we would say wrong, the path of that which is not. But at some point, as you go through millions of years of the fourth density, the fifth, and they get into the sixth density, then they have a problem, because in order to go further, they have to see everyone as the creator. They can't control or separate from them anymore. They can't do wrong things. So what they do is reverse their polarity and become one with the creator, because they are very wise, having been through fifth density of wisdom. And from that point on, after the mid sixth density, there is no more polarity. So I would say that there is no right or wrong, because everything helps the creator to know itself. Everything that happens in our world helps us to know ourselves, because we are not separate from everybody else in the world, whatever they are doing. We need to see them as the creator as well. We might not want to, have them over for dinner, but they are the creator.
I definitely get that from the sixth density perspective. I guess the thing that is perhaps troubling or confusing or whatever is that from a third density perspective, is that not kind of the whole point, to make that choice between different polarities, what we see as service to others, service to self, right or wrong?
Yes, that is indeed the choice. And the reason it works is because there's a veil of forgetting between our conscious and subconscious minds, so that we can see that there is a world around us that is, well, I guess a better way of putting it would be, if we want to become the creator, in the balancing exercises, Ross suggested that we look at everything that we do and balance it so that we become a 360-degree being. We are the thief, the poet, the mystic, the writer, the murderer. We are everything. And that is a way of accepting everything and everyone and all parts of ourselves as the creator. So know yourself, accept yourself, and become the creator. That's a direct quote from Ra. So that's the way it works. If this is an illusion, we have to remember that. What we see as right and wrong here, if we stick to those points and are not able to see others as the creator too, then we still have work to do on accepting ourselves, because usually what happens is what we do not like about another person is being reflected from them to us. We're seeing ourselves in that mirror.
Beautifully said. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I would like to go ahead and start looking at questions, taking questions from the chat window. So I do see Fred, Rohit, Guillermo, and then Robert. And then if there's any questions after that, I'll have to go back and check. But why don't we go ahead and start with Fred. Fred, would you like to unmute your mic and ask?
Sure. I was wondering, on the LNL Research's website, you have a podcast, and I know it's on Spotify also. That's where I found your direct material on Spotify. Were there any plans in the future to do any more episodes? I think you're at like a episode like 105, 106 was the last I checked my Spotify to see if you added any more. Was there any plans for you guys to do any more of that?
Well, Gary and Austin and Trish have been so busy with all of the other work for LNL Research that we haven't had any chance to do podcasts for a couple of years now. And I thought that would probably be the case, that I would be the only one doing any kind of podcast like this. But they were over a couple of weeks ago, and they said something about wanting to start up the podcasts again. So I'm looking forward to that happening.
Nice. Does that answer your question, Fred?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. That's one of the main ways I digest material is with my earbuds doing other things. You know, I do digest a lot of material, and I really appreciated the podcast that you guys put out. I appreciate Jonathan's new podcast, and a whole bunch of people who do that work. it's really, really appreciated by people like me. I'm sure other people do too.
That's great. I hope we can continue to give you information that you can use and enjoy.
Indeed. Thanks for the
Thank you.
question, Fred. Rohit, would you like to unmute your mic and ask your question?
Yeah, hi, good evening. So yeah, so my question was that I think they have spoken in law of one or probably in raw material that we are in the third density experience, but we still have the body of second density, animal body. So my question was that if so how does this third density body looks like? Is it available or is not given to us? Because as they say that it was transferred from the Mars, I believe, or from the Maldic. So whatever body was available on that time, so we've taken that body. So how would a third density body would look like? Yeah, thank you.
Well, our body is our body in the third density, but it comes
Mhm.
from the second density ape,
Okay.
which apparently the entire uh, third density bodies throughout this major galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, are all from the ape. And I'm not sure why, Rod didn't really know why either that the ape
Mhm.
was chosen as the form, because I know later on in the raw contact, Don asked how many other entities in the entire creation would look like us, with these ape bodies. And Rod said, I think it was 5 to 10%, somewhere around there. And so Don said, wow, that's a lot of different kind of bodies. And so we have a second density body that we inhabit and that carries us around in this third density illusion. And we need to take care of those bodies, because if we didn't have those bodies, we couldn't interact with each other. And so, you know, the older you get, the more care you need to take of your body, I've discovered. And so that's just the way it is. I mean, we have I think Quo called it a personality shell. And we have a consciousness that inhabits the shell of our body. The body is a shell of consciousness. And this is the way that we get to interact with each other, to learn who we are, to make the choice, to do whatever you need to do within the third density. So if you couldn't walk around here and interact with each other, it'd be kind of a boring life, and you wouldn't have a chance to get a lot done.
True. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. No follow-ups on that, Rohit?
Um, Yeah, so yeah, as Jim said that yes, even the third density body would look like or function the same way. I thought maybe we would be having more higher consciousness, more alertness on the sensory purpose or something. So I think that's okay. I understood. Yeah, I was believing that our ETs maybe they inhabit third density body or something. You know, yeah.
Yeah, I seem to remember reading at least one or two passages where Quo, I think, said that, yeah, the choice in this logos, our sub-logos, chose the ape body partly for the opposable thumb, so that it would enhance the likelihood that third density entities would build tools, which would then make them less prone to using their minds, using their bodies to like build tools and stuff instead of developing telepathic skills, for example. That was something that they deliberately made more difficult for third density entities here.
Okay. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much for the answers. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I see Guillermo next, and then Robert, and then L. Yi, who I'm guessing is Lindsay, and then Aram. Guillermo, would you like to unmute your mic and ask your question?
Yes, hopefully my connection is not too unstable. But since we're talking about the audios, Jim, there are many thanks to be given to you, and a big one of them is the audios. Now, the previous audios with the machine voice was cool, but now with your voice, it has revolutionated the Love One experience. Yeah, I listen to it on road trips, while going to work, while going to university, everywhere. It's great. Thank you. Thank you so
I'm
much for
glad you
that.
enjoy it. Thank you.
Yeah. So last time I asked you a question about the violet ray activation. In summary, you mentioned that the violet ray has a greater and greater manifestation as we proceed through the densities. And one thing that really caught my attention is that you mentioned that at the end of the eighth density, then at some point everything coalesces back together, and it is the harvest of the creator, and everything begins again. So I thought about it a lot, and I came up with these questions to see what's your take upon that. So here we go. In the love one, we mentioned there's a mention of octaves of existence, of the octaves of densities, and there's sub-octave, like infinite sub-octaves. But it seems to be implicit that there is such a thing as eight main octaves, and then you have like an infinity of sub-octaves. But I was wondering if maybe these eight main octaves, could it be possible that they are themselves eight sub-octaves of two different harmonics? You know, that would be really crazy. I don't even know how it could make sense, or does it even make sense to ask this question? But
I
one
think your
thing,
question makes sense. Jim, would
yeah.
you like to respond to that much of it?
Well, I'm not quite sure if I understand it. Are you saying there are more than one grouping of 8 octaves that would interact with each other? I'm not sure if I
I
can.
think he is suggesting that this octave is one of like 8 octaves. And I wasn't aware that there was any limit on the number of octaves. My impression was the octaves just went on into infinity.
Yeah.
But you're right that this octave could be a sub-octave of some larger octave and blah, blah, blah. Is that what you're asking, Guillermo, or am I misinterpreting your question? Are you there? Your mic is muted.
Yes, sorry. So what I meant is that in the love one, Ra mentions that there are a lot of sub-octaves, right?
Hmm?
Okay. So and there are eight main octaves,
Right.
and then once you pierce through the last one, then everything recreates again, and it's a whole different experience. And
When you say 8 octaves, do you mean 8 densities within one octave?
oh yeah, eight densities. Yes. So sorry. Yeah, the eight
Big difference.
densities. Yeah, the eight main densities. Could they be like sub densities of like a bigger octave? That's my
Oh,
question.
well, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, they would be discrete by themselves. They would not be part of greater octaves within this octave. However, there are an infinite number of octaves to come and an infinite number that have been. So there are an infinite number of octaves, but they are sequential in their, what you say, their ability of the creator to know itself within this portion of its creation. It creates the octaves learn and have experiences, and the creator knows itself, and we all coalesce as the creator, become one again, and then it all goes over again. But as Ross said, it begins and ends in mystery.
Does it answer your question, Guillermo? Do you have any follow-ups on that? It's a
Yes,
great
and
question.
yes, and I think a big part of the mystery is the role of the guardians. I don't know if
Mhm.
maybe because they seem to be like an interface between the next octave of the dimensions and this one. And in theory, there should be like a guardian from our first density that that surveys or that monitors the previous octave or something like that. Did you ever ask Ra or Hayton or anything about the role of the guardians, or do you have anything that you have want to share?
Well, the role of the guardians seems to be to help the entities or the population of planet Earth to be able to partake in their evolutionary process without interference from any other entities of, say, a negative nature. That there has to be a calling for all entities to be able to come to the planet and go through the quarantine. As far as, let's see, what I was going to tell you here. The Guardians yeah, this is what I was going to say. When we go through the harvest and we leave our bodies, we drop our bodies and walk into the light, there are those that are called the light bringers that are even more than guardians. They're from the octave beyond this one, which is something that kind of blew our minds when we discovered that. And also, Ross said that they had communicated with such entities and that they had also communicated with those guardians or bringers of light from before this octave, which makes you wonder if we all coalesce and become one with the creator, where are these guardians, these light bringers coming from if we're all one? So I think that's part of the beginning and ending in mystery. I don't think that it can be explained in words, but Ross said that they had been in contact with entities from both sides, before and after this octave.
That is super fascinating. Jim, am I understanding correctly that the Guardians are inner planes entities associated with this planet?
Yes, they're basically associated with the Council of Saturn. There are 9 entities, the 9 that sit on the Council of Saturn. And then I believe they said that there were 16 guardians that all were available for whatever kind of work that would be done by the council, and if thoughts or plans by social memory complexes such as Ra that would come before the council as to whether or not it would be a good idea to do that, then the guardians might have something to say about that.
So the Guardians are below the council in spiritual hierarchy?
More or less, although I think they're basically interchangeable as well. I don't know if the council is always the same 9. It may be.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
I really don't know.
Sure.
I mean, we start getting here into what might be called the eternal present moment and how people and entities function on the inner planes. And so, truly a mystery.
Yeah, indeed. And if I remember right, I mean, the guardian known as Yahweh was also identified as a confederation entity, if I remember right. Which
the original Yahweh was
right.
There are negative entities appropriated the name of Yahweh in order to have their way with who they hope would be an elite that could take over the planet and make it negative too.
But I think I had thought that guardians were separate from the confederation. So I was a little confused by Yahweh being identified as a guardian and a member of the confederation.
Yeah. Well, that was my understanding too, that the Guardians are not a part of the Confederation. The Confederation is formed of 4th, 5th, 6th density social memory complexes. And so I don't think the Guardians would be part of the Confederation.
We need a flow chart. That's what we need. A flow chart or a Venn diagram or an Excel spreadsheet or whoever is in charge of that stuff. Get on that. Would appreciate it. Thank you, Guillermo, for your question. I do want to move on to Robert's question, followed by Lindsay's, I believe, and then Aram, and then I know Mick had a question as well. Robert, would you like to unmute your mic and ask?
Good evening, sir. It's a pleasure to be with you again. Want to make sure and thank you for all your service for this planet. Love you very much. After all this cosmic traveling, I feel kind of weird asking this simple question, but Jim, did you have any childhood heroes or celebrities?
Well, I guess when I was in high school, my hero was my baseball coach, Monty Kiffin. He was not only the one who helped me, it was the coach who coached us to the state championship in 1963. But at that time, he was playing football for the University of Nebraska. And while he was playing there, they won 2 national championships under Bob Devaney. And then after he played there, he became a backfield coach. And eventually, I think he played a little pro ball, but he decided to stay with the coaching. And so eventually he became a backfield coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And in 2002, they won the Super Bowl. And later on, he just passed away this past July 11th. And I went to the funeral and celebration of life for him. And just before he passed away, he was inducted to the National Football League Hall of Fame. So then he was my hero. And I was just 16 years old at that time.
What a great question, Robert. Thank you for asking that. Do you have any follow-ups on that?
I thank you for that answer. Yeah. And I actually did remember hearing that on one of these sessions with you during the summer. I must have forgot. But celebrities, part of the question also, maybe, were there any like movie stars or even radio celebrities you were impressed by?
I'm going back to my childhood to try to remember all of that.
I know. Yeah.
Didn't watch a lot of TV, huh?
I like comedians. I liked Jerry Lewis. And let's see, who else? I like some musicians. That time, though, who were they? I've always liked musicians.
How about during the hippie revolution?
Oh,
Any figures in there that struck you as inspirational or heroes? People you kind of maybe admired or wanted to be like?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to remember again. The hippie revolution for me was back in the 60s. So that's about 80 years ago. I'm trying to remember. Who was Allman Brothers Band?
Yeah.
I was living in Jacksonville, Florida at the time. They were pretty famous then.
So many musicians at that time, I think, were so inspirational to so many people. Robert, did you have any other follow-ups on that?
No.
These are all great questions.
That's fine. Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
Jim, you didn't read comic books or anything like that as a kid, did you?
No, I went to movies a lot. My mom and dad had a grocery store in Lexington, Nebraska. It was a town of 5,000 people. And right across the street was the Majestic Theater. And I would go over there every Saturday night and watch whatever was on. The movies usually changed from week to week. And
were there any movies that made a big impression on you when you were at a young, impressionable age?
I don't remember the names of the movies. I just remember I always sat in the 7th row, the second seat in from the aisle, and I would get so engrossed in the movie that I would forget it was a movie, that I was part of it. And then as I was walking out of the movie, going outside, I say, that was just a movie.
Oh, wow. Oh, what a great story. Yes, you were one with the movie experience. Thanks for the questions, Robert. We had another question from someone in the chat window who was L. Yee, and I'm guessing that's Lindsay. Lindsay, are you asking that question?
Yes,
Would you like
I am.
Go for it.
I have quite a bit of dream. I would call it contact, and a lot of it it's just a lot of information. And I found that like the more I would try to like follow up or like find more information about something or like try to incorporate like recommended spiritual practices, like my day-to-day life actually got way worse. And so I was recommended me to in a dream to basically like, they just really like your reactions, like stop engaging. And so once I started doing that, it was like, I found I still get quite a bit of information. But like my day-to-day has gotten so much better, just like not responding. Like I don't like react at all, like not even sending like loving, like love and light feelings. Like, but even doing that would kind of like intensify the experience. So I found that just like.
So do you have a question, Lindsay?
Yeah. So I guess my curious is, I'm curious if like there's any knowledge that you like, personal knowledge that you may have to share with me as far as like what to do in situations where you come across information that's maybe not the most helpful.
So you're getting that from your dream that was not helpful, and you would rather not have that information, rather not.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I don't know if I have any say over whether or not I receive the information, but I guess just like as a like how's in your experience, like do you have any recommendations of how to manage or respond to it?
Well, I've never gotten information in my dreams that I felt was not in my best interest. So this is something that I have actually, this is the first time I've heard of anybody having that. I guess I would recommend before you go to bed, have a little meditation and ask for your guidance or your higher self to help you find the information in your dreams that is helpful in your spiritual journey. And maybe to also protect you from any sources that would give you any kind of other information that is not helpful. Because usually, now that we have that veil of forgetting between the conscious and the subconscious minds, the dreaming is a way that our subconscious mind or our guides or our higher self can give us hints and clues as to how to travel our spiritual journey. And so, in general, the dreaming is considered to be a very powerful spiritual tool, but you might need to have some assistance from your guides or higher self to keep the dreams positively oriented.
Any follow-ups on that, Lindsay?
No, thank you.
That's a great question. Thanks for asking. Guillermo, did you have a clarification question on this?
It's more to you, Lindsay. I once dreamt that I saw the equation of the universe and I went an entire year in physics. And then I realized maybe it's not, that was not the meaning of the dream. So now I'm just kind of like, maybe it's just sometimes you're shown cool things, but you don't always have to enact them like in real life. And there's a certain discernment that comes with practice that.
For sure. Thanks for sharing that, Guillermo. Aram, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yeah. Hi. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Aram. Good to see you again.
It's good to see you too. I have a question about the nature of infringement. So hypothetically, so if someone who is psychic or clairvoyant has the ability to see future events for someone else, would telling them about their predictions be a form of undue influence? Could it be a form of infringing on the other's free will?
Well, that's a good question. I think that in general, whatever any person that's psychic or not psychic says to another person can either be accepted or rejected by the other person. They always have free will to say, no, I don't think that's right. So I don't think it really has to be. But if somebody has some extra control over a person and tells them something psychically about it, could be an infringement if someone trusted them so much, I think that would basically be, for younger children, that would be influenced by older people that would say, well, this is what you need to do. This is what I think about your future. And, but a child doesn't have that ability to discern usually. But an adult, I think, has that ability. So in general, I'd say no, it wouldn't be an infringement. It's a sort of a take it or leave it thing.
Okay. The reason why I ask is because in the past, there have been times when I've felt uncertain about things and I've gone to people who, were psychic or, advertised themselves as psychic. And I'm wondering, I would take in their information and use my discernment, but I was wondering if, on a unconscious level, I was somehow taking in that information and increasing the probability of it coming true through unconscious actions. And so I wasn't sure if that was the impact that it had on my own free will and if that meant that it was some form of infringement. But I guess I have the ability to make those choices.
You do, but you just reminded me about some people uh, have almost an addiction to psychic uh, resources and look to them for a lot of the information they get in their lives. And I know of a person of that nature, and I've always thought that she was relying too much on psychic predictions that supposedly were coming through a channel or a psychic from her mother. And she would do whatever the mother told her to do through the channel. And she wouldn't think for herself. So I think it's possible, but it's something that you create out of your own, I guess, feelings of unworthiness or not knowing. But in general, I don't think it's something that is really going to be a problem for most people. But for some, it could be.
Okay. Thank you.
Those are great questions, Aurel. Yeah, thank you for asking. I do see Mick and Diane had questions next in the chat window, but I did have a question that was sent in to us yesterday, I think, by one of our Facebook group members who was not able to join us. So I'm going to ask this question on behalf of Jazz. Question is about intentional communities. And Jim, question, what do you think of intentional communities around the world where they are trying to live a more sustainable life, good for the environment, they have their own currency, they grow food, etc.? Is this a possible manifestation of fourth density positive people and Earth?
I think so. And I'm always glad to hear about groups like that. I know that throughout history of the United States, there have been some that have attempted that. And I don't think there's been much success as far as I know. Now, I don't have a whole lot of information about that. But I know that we tried to get an intentional group going here a couple of times, and it just didn't work out because people eventually, wanted to go their own way. And so we blessed them and said, well, thanks for trying.
For sure. Yeah, I can totally imagine that. So many different wanderer personalities coming into play, which doesn't necessarily lend itself really well to living in close quarters. Thank you for the question, Jazz. I wanted to turn to Mick. Would you like to unmute your mic and ask your question? And anyone who's still on the Zoom meeting, if you still have a question you would like to ask, we have time for it. Go ahead, put it in the chat window. And Mick, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Loud and clear.
Cool. Thanks, Jim. Good to be here. So I had a question. Do you have an opinion on animal shelters? A little background, like I worked at one, and a lot of times I felt like I was like objectively violating the free will of the animal, putting it in a cage, giving it medicine. And it's like, yeah, it's like you can say it's for its best interest, but that's like, I don't know. Do you have any opinions on that?
Now, are you talking about an animal shelter where the animals don't ever get a home, a forever home? They're just there in the shelter for the rest of their lives?
Well, I worked at a rescue, so that was taking them from shelters and finding them homes. But basically, the whole process of taking a stray animal on the street and sterilizing it, like neutering it, etc., putting it into a shelter, either a kill shelter, a non-kill shelter. I don't know. I had a lot of kind of conflicts internally about that.
Yeah, well, I definitely don't go for the kill shelters. And I understand why some shelters would want to keep the animals for a while and neuter them because there's in some areas there's just a lot of animals, especially cats, around that can cause problems. But I think in general, if they're in a shelter and getting food and medicine, and they feel like they're you can tell that they enjoy being alive. I think it's a good idea. But if there's some way that they can let you know that that's just not the way they want to live, maybe there would be another solution, but I don't know what it would be.
It's a great question, Mick.
It
Any
is,
follow-ups on that?
It's a hard one to answer too.
Yeah, it is a hard one. I wanted, because I was working there for several months listening to a lot of the channeling, and they're always talking about free will, and it always was like a juxtaposition of like the dog, and you ask like if you can tell if they like it or not. Like I felt pretty confidently they did not like it, and I worked at a rescue that was like pretty good. Like they had a lot better than most shelters are pretty bad. Like they're pretty hard places to be for long periods of time if you're like empathic. Like I had to quit working there actually
Yeah.
because it was like, yeah. So yeah, I wondered if any thoughts on that. I had another question. Are you still a baseball fan this time of year?
No, I don't know why, but after Carla passed into larger life, I just lost my interest in sports and watching television and going to movies and things. I don't know why, but I don't have any interest in that anymore.
What sports were you watching together when Carla was around? What
Oh,
team
well,
was she a fan of?
Well, being in Kentucky, I started off in the woods being a Kentucky fan, University of Kentucky. And I moved to Louisville, and I was a University of Louisville fan. And so I was both of them. And then I was still kind of interested in Nebraska, University of Nebraska, because they had good football teams for a while. So, we did that. I think she basically put up with me watching the sports. As long as I was happy, she was glad I was watching the sports, but I don't do that.
Oh, that's sweet. Elaine, did you have a clarification question?
I have a follow-up question. How old is Boscoe? Is Boscoe, I'm assuming, a male?
Yeah.
And how's he doing?
Have you all heard about Boscoe? Did I talk about him last
reading,
time?
I read about Boscoe every day.
Oh, okay.
From the Camelot Journal.
Oh, well, I'm very honored.
And I always, my heart just goes out to you and Boscoe every time you mention.
Yes, well, Boscoe he's 19 years old.
Wow.
And he is a he. And he has all kinds of problems. It started off when I first knew him about 6 years ago. He had stomatitis, which is inflammation of the throat, which meant all his teeth had to be extracted.
Oh, no.
And then he was positive for feline leukemia. And then later on, he developed diabetes, which he still has. And then he has congestive heart failure. And he had a cancerous growth removed from his mouth, and he has cancer in his kidney as a present. So the big challenge is trying to get him to eat food that has all the medications that you need for that. Especially, twice a day, 12 hours apart, I have to give him an insulin injection. So he's got to have food first. And sometimes he's a little picky about what he wants to eat. And I'll get all his meds in a food, I'll give it to him, and he'll just kind of turn his nose up at it and walk away. And so I have to try 2 or 3 or 4 times to get him to eat something. And I eventually give up trying to get all the medications in there. Just say, Bosco, just eat something for me. And tonight he did a great job. I went down to Feeder Supply where they have all kinds of cat food, and I got 3 or 4 different kinds. Altogether, I probably have 10 or 12 kinds, trying to keep him, interested in the food we've got. So despite all of that, he's still a sweet cat, and he still, is a great cat to hang out with. He still likes me brushing him at night before I go to bed. So
that's sweet.
We're having a good time together.
I've never heard of a cat 19 years old.
That's amazing.
So obviously Bosco does not want to leave you.
Well, I'm hoping that he'll stay around long enough that I can help him become a third density being.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
The giving and taking of love, from him to me and me to him, I think is a way. So every time I have a chance to pet him, I pet him. When I'm sitting in my bedroom, which is also my office, working on my Camelot journal, he comes in and he meows. I take time out and I pet him some more.
Yes.
And so,
that's so sweet.
We're working on it. We're going to get him there.
Thank you for asking, Elaine. Thank you, Jim. And give our love to Bosco.
Yes.
We have time for 2 more questions. We're going to take one from Diane and then one from Rohit, and then we will wrap it up. Diane, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah. You were talking about murder and that we've all been the murderer, and I hear that. So I'm kind of like, let's bring this to today. Today, most murderers know their victim. Most victims know the person who has murdered them. But it occurs to me that sometimes it almost seems pre-incarnative, that somewhere along the line, when I've looked at cases, my God, this was chosen. And if that's correct, how does that work with polarity? If could I possibly say, I will murder you because I love you and I know you need this? Is that a possibility? And if a person does commit a murder or a victim does create a situation where that will happen, is anybody positively or going to, is there any positive polarity in that? How does that work?
That's a great question. What do you think, Jim?
I don't think there is one good answer for that question. I think anything is possible. There are spiritual families that trade roles back and forth from one incarnation to another. They help each other learn certain lessons. And sometimes, lessons of change and becoming more than you were are painful. And we grow by pain a lot of times. But as far as murdering being something that would be a means of a positive entity becoming more positive, I kind of doubt that. I would guess, and I could be wrong, that that might be something that negatively oriented entities would do. But then again, I don't think that they would agree with, to work with anybody else, because their way of doing things is separation from each other and control of each other. So I think that more likely it is somewhat, I guess what you say, made maybe not a pre-incarnated choice, but some tendency in the pre-incarnated choices that was distorted and not correctly perceived, because supposedly our pre-incarnated choices are given a bias by our subconscious mind, so that when we're in the situation that gives us a chance to enact the pre-incarnated choice, then our subconscious mind gives a bias for us to see it in a certain way. And I just don't think that murder would be one of those things for a positive entity, and I don't think negatives would do it. I think it has to be a confusion of pre-incarnated choices playing out in the life pattern, that once the incarnation is over and the review of the incarnation is completed with the higher self, that signpost that was misinterpreted would be attempted again, so that that would not occur again. That's
Do you
just my
think, Jim,
guess.
it could be a matter of karma, that each of those entities are taking on those roles in order to balance karma for what they did or didn't do in previous incarnation?
It's possible. I mean, I think there are an infinity of possibilities. I
sure.
really don't think there's one set, description of how this works.
It's a great question, Diane. Did you have any
Yeah.
follow-ups?
Yeah.
Actually, you already answered my follow-ups. As you were evolving your answer, you answered the other questions I was going to ask. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the question. It's a mind blower.
Indeed. Rohit, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yeah,
there?
my question was related to like Carla, when she was there. It mentioned also in, I think in Raw Contact, that once she took a thing called LSD, and no one knew, but it was came out in the contact that Ra mentioned that she took some kind of substance, with her, and it was open for a negative entity to come inside her field, or let's say aura, or I don't know, energy center, something like that. So did it help her in positively or in negatively? Or is it recommendable for wanderers to take this substance and to access higher I don't know, consciousness or something? Yes. Thank you.
She actually took LSD twice, And we didn't know about it at the time. It was with another friend of ours that had been a member of the group that Don and Carla started years before the Raw Contact. And as far as what Raw had to say about it was that for Carla, it was not a good idea to take LSD because it tended to drain her energy, her physical body energy, and her mental energy. The physical body was the difficult part because she already had a weak body as it was. And they did say that for other people, if they took the substance known as LSD during the session, it would be helpful. But Carla took it before the session and it was wearing off. So at some point, they had to shorten the sessions. So if you've seen the Law of One books, you know that book 2 is much shorter than any other book because she took 2 types or 2 LSD experiences, it doubled the effect. So the first one would have caused 1 month of difficulty. The second one would cause 2 months. You add them up, that's 3 months. So for 3 months, our sessions were much shorter, and that's reflected in book 2. Now, I do know other folks. When I went out to Oregon to be with the folks at Cosmic Awareness Communications before I came back to join Donna Carla, many times those channels for cosmic awareness would take LSD and it would aid their channeling of the entity. So it's something that also that varies according to, the body construct and what your ability is to use that kind of energy. But for Carla, they did not recommend it at all.
Great question.
Thank you so much for the answers.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for the questions. I believe that was the last question I saw in the chat window. If I missed somebody, please let me know. Otherwise, Jim, we do have a little tradition here of ending our sessions with something we are calling a pop quiz. Today is no different. As most of our viewers know by now, I believe pop quiz was an expression that Carla used to use to refer to the little tests and challenges we get in our daily rounds to see if we have learned the lessons that we came here to incarnate. And these Q&As in our podcast, we just like doing up at the end of the session to add some laughter and levity to some otherwise serious conversations. So today, Jim, for our pop quiz, I think it would be safe to say most of our viewers know that you live in the great state of Kentucky, and that within the great state of Kentucky, you live in the great city of Louisville. But how much do they know, and how much do you know about the great city of Louisville? Well, let's find out. Today, I'm going to ask you 3 multiple questions about Louisville, Kentucky. Let's see how many of you and our viewers can answer correctly. Viewers, go ahead and say out loud to yourself. Folks in the Zoom meeting, you can put them in the chat window if you want. As always, the points don't matter. If you had fun, you won. If you learned something new and interesting about Louisville, you won. Jim, are you ready for your first question?
Oh, yeah.
All right. I'm guessing you're going to get at least one of these questions correct, which is more than you would usually wager. How about for your first question, who was Louisville named after? You probably know that it was King Louis of France, but was it King Louis the IX, King Louis the XIII, or King Louis the XVI? What do you think, Jim?
C, 16th.
Oh, wow. Are you just guessing, or did you know that?
No, I know that.
Oh, wow. Good for you. Yeah. Anything else you can tell our viewers about King Louis the XVI?
Nope.
He was, let's see, the last king of France before the fall of the monarchy. Yes. And his queen was someone named Marie Antoinette, who most people have probably heard of.
Oh, yeah.
Who I only learned from researching this question was there's no records of her actually saying, "Let them eat cake," the line that was supposedly attributed to her that ended up getting her beheaded eventually, along with her husband. Yes, King Louis, the city was named after him in appreciation of his support for the American Revolutionary War. Because in 1778, Ben Franklin, the first U.S. ambassador to France, asked King Louis for help. Louis provided money, troops, and naval support, which did, in fact, help the Americans win the war. And that is why, to this day, Louisville symbol is the fleur-de-lis, the coat of arms of France. Are you ready for your second question, Jim?
Okie dokie.
This one I think you might know. I don't know if our viewers know, though. What famous athlete was a Louisville native? Was it A, Jim Brown, B, Carl Lewis, or C, Muhammad Ali?
Oh, come on. Muhammad Ali.
Well,
Muhammad
you
Ali
knew that.
International Airport.
Yes, you know that, and anybody who's been to Louisville knows that. But otherwise, yeah, a lot of folks might not know that Muhammad Ali, yeah, born
He was
in
a very inspiring human being after he got Parkinson's disease.
yeah. Tell us about him. What thoughts do you have on this very special third density entity?
Well, he wanted to help people do what they felt was right in their life, and he stood up for folks that weren't. He was a social activist later on in his life. We have the Muhammad Ali Center downtown, and it's got the story of his life. You walk through it, you get to see everything about him and what he stood for. He had his. I have an entire chapter or section in a chapter of 103 devoted to Muhammad Ali.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, looking forward to that.
So I think he was just one of the greatest human beings we've ever had.
That's how he got his nickname. Yeah, for folks who were not alive or adult enough to know, he was just a really incredible person. Larger than life seems to be a description that was invented for him. So much, just an incredibly charismatic, incredibly skilled professional athlete.
Yeah.
And I would say, yeah, someone who had obviously a really huge ego, really huge sense of self, but so clearly cared so much about others as well and service to others. What do you think, Jim, from a Law of One perspective? Do you think he graduated? Was he a wanderer?
I think that he did graduate, and he may or may not have been a wanderer. Doesn't matter. He made it.
Yeah, indeed. Enough said. Let's see. Third question, someone you are probably quite a bit less familiar with, but our viewers probably will be more familiar with. What famous movie actress was born and raised in Louisville? Was it A, Jennifer Lawrence,
A.
B, Emma Stone, or C, Brie Larson?
A.
Wow, you knew that. I did not actually think you would know that. How did you know Jennifer Lawrence?
She is an icon in Louisville. She has charities, so many donations to charities all over town.
Oh, I did not know that.
She's an amazing human being herself. Around Louisville, there are big signs on buildings that honor people like her. She's one of them. And Muhammad Ali is one of them. Yeah, she's a beautiful soul.
She seems like a really, really cool person, good person, and is obviously known for her serious roles in the Hunger Games and the X-Men movies and other serious movies. But she's really great comedic actress too. I think the last movie she did was called No Hard Feelings that she helped produce, I believe, and hilarious. She is, really great, serious and comedic actress. And that movie has a lot of heart to it. It's a beautiful film. Strongly recommend. And that's neat to know that she is honored and remembered in Louisville. Enough that you would know her. Jim, wanted to thank you again for being here and sharing your time with us as always. Did you have any last thoughts, reflections wanted to share before we say goodbye?
Well, I want to thank you all again. You're always so impressive with the questions you ask, and you get me thinking about things I haven't thought about before. I mean, when I first got off of the raw contact and I wanted to do something else, I tried to get some readers' questions, but I didn't get enough to be able to continue that for my Camelot journal. But if I just would remember all the questions you've asked me, I could have been doing that still today. But it's worked out well because I enjoy working with Carla's quo channelings. But I thank you again for all of the great questions, opening your hearts, sharing them with me, giving me a chance to think, use my little bitty mind to try to respond, and hopefully open my heart to you and let you know that I love you for every question, for every moment we've been together. And I look forward to being together again.
Love you so much, my friend. On behalf of everyone here and everyone watching this, it's such a joy and a privilege and an honor to hang out with you. Thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. To all the friends at L&L Research, thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. For all who joined us on this Zoom meeting and bringing your beautiful questions and your vibrations and your energy, thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. For everyone watching this on video at some time in the near or distant future, thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. We're sending you our love and we're feeling yours. Until next time, in the love and light of the one infinite creator, Adonai, namaste.